be willing to invest in some of these tools that are going to make your labor more efficient. Okay, hand tools I'm talking about here, because power tools are gone. The other thing is, there's a little book called Diary of an Early American Boy by Eric Sloan. I don't know if any of you have read this or not, would encourage you to do so. Eric Sloan is a historian and into early American stuff a whole bunch. And he discovered a diary, or somebody gave it to him or something, of this early American boy, I'm guessing about 14 years old, on a farm up in New England as they were carving their farms out of the wilderness. And so he takes the boy's diary entries and kind of fleshes it out and tells what was really going on and what was, what the boy talked about, what was happening. And in the evenings, this family, they sat around and made nails, like you're talking about. They had rods, they would get rods and they'd put them in their fire and had a little nail die and just pull them out, hammer out the point of the nail and cut it off and hammer the head on it, and they made nails. And just, I use that also as an illustration of how productive Americans used to be. There was very little just sit around downtime. They were always crafting something. And you see these ladies every once in a while still, when they're just sitting there, even some of them come to meeting and they're sitting there and they're knitting, right? I read this once and I've tried to go back and find it and I haven't been able to. But the story is of one of the General Conference meetings back in the day, and Ellen White's sitting here on the front row listening to the speakers, and she's knitting socks. And somebody says, Sister White, why are you knitting? Isn't that being disrespectful? And she's like, no. Says, our missionaries in Europe, it's going to get cold and they're going to need something to keep their feet warm, and so I'm knitting them socks. And so here's, apparent downtime, but she's being productive. As a culture, we've gotten out of that. Almost totally, not completely, but almost totally. And it's something we're going to need to get back into. Okay? Eric Sloan. Yeah, he's put out he has a really good book on, called A Reverence for Wood also, on woodworking with hand tools. Yes?
Nice tool to have at home as well is like a 1 or 2 ton jack,
yes.
Solid jack.
Yes.
It's got a lot of utility. You can press the oil as well with it.
That's what they use for that cylinder press I was talking about. Yeah, just like a 1 pound hydraulic jack. And you kind of the frame to put it in too. But yeah, recently, and this is like my next skill I want to work on personally, is I read something like that. And it's an account, I think the guy's name, Doddridge was his last name. I can't remember his first name. I want to say Joseph, but that might not be right. Anyway, he lived back in pre-Revolutionary War times. And he had the skill of weaving. And he knew how to carve a loom. And have you ever heard of a paddle loom? I think that's the kind of loom he had. Anyway, it's like a board. It has a whole bunch of slits in it, and then on the slits there's a hole. So part of the warp. Yeah, the warp goes through here, and then the other strings go up or down so that you can weave. Anyway, he knew how to carve one of those, and he said he was able to make a belt carve a loom and make a belt in a day with just a few simple hand tools that he had. And with that skill, he could earn as much money as a boy. He could earn as much money as a man working out in the field. And so he was able to help support the family that way. And so, anyway, I'm wanting to make a paddle loom because I'm into woodworking a little bit too, and just play with that because, you need belts and straps. I think, coming from the angle of wilderness survival, if you want to carry anything, you can weave cordage, right? But if you ever try to carry something with just a piece of rope for a strap, that doesn't feel very good. And so you want like about a 2-inch strap that you could carry stuff with. And so I'm like, okay, if I knew how to make 2-inch straps, that's going to help us when we have to flee to the mountains and carry everything. So anyway, that's my thinking on that. But I just want, since you mentioned that, even children can learn a lot of these skills and make a definite contribution. Just within the last year at our place, we do a lot of programs, but we've started a new program. We call it No Buy, No Sell Lifestyle Training. And so for the weekend, people come and we practice living without being able, what life would be like without being able to buy or sell. From an outside perspective, the two programs that we did, one last fall and one this spring, I'm going to do another one this fall, hopefully. The programs weren't really a success, but those of us that came, we learned so much anyway that we felt it was a success in spite of the fact that we didn't achieve our goals. And kind of in that vein, I want to just challenge you maybe to set up a weekend where you live as if you were not able to buy or sell. And if you can get together with a group, your learning curve takes off that much more because you have minds working together to share and, and compare notes and stuff, and so it always works better that way. So I don't know if you want to set something up like that or not, but I would like somebody to grab that and run with it.
That program we did really helped us know that we have a lot more we can learn.
Yeah, we thought before we did the program, we thought we were a lot closer than we actually are. And anyway, we're still working towards our goal. So let's talk a little bit about here, what would our lifestyle, I'm off the notes too, so don't just you'll have to take your own notes on this one. What would our lifestyle be like without being able to buy or sell? Okay? What are some of the things that come to mind? If you're not able to buy or sell, what does that kick out?
Self-sufficiency.
Right, it requires self-sufficiency, which goes back to the list that we had up on the board before I erased it.
I think they've got a year before they repossess the house.
What?
You've got about a year before they repossess the house if you own it.
I was talking with somebody about that this morning, and I don't really see that happening, just to be honest with you. The idea, and unfortunately, I'm not taking your view here at all, I don't think. A little bit that I've talked with you, I don't see you thinking this direction at all. But I have talked to other people that are going this direction with this. And what they say is, well, when you can't buy or sell, you can't pay property taxes, and then they're going to come and take it away from you, so why bother setting up in the first place? That's where they go with it. Okay, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing at all, because I don't think so. I don't think that's realistic from the perspective of God's Word, because that is where God told us to go. All right? And so He's got it worked out somehow. What I do know, and I think each county is a little different here, but if you stop paying your taxes, they don't come and kick you off right away. Okay? They will fine you. They're after your money, right? And if they can fine you, they're getting more than if they're kicking you off and it's just sitting there and nobody's paying taxes on it. And so actually, they have tax auctions where back there, if people don't pay their taxes and the property appears to be abandoned, but it's like 5 or 10 years down the road before it goes to that process. Well, by the time that process runs its course, we will be through it all. And so I say, just what I want to emphasize here is don't let the fear of them kicking you off because you're not able to pay your taxes, don't let that keep you from going to obeying what God told us to do to get out in the country. Okay? The other thing that goes with that is too often we think not just on this issue, but on other issues, we think here we are depriving ourselves, living out in the country, not being able to buy or sell, and so on and so on. Basically really roughing it where the rest of the world is living a fairly normal life. That is not going to be the picture either. Right? During the time of trouble, while we're out in the country, the rest of the world is going through chaos. Okay, there's going to be all sorts of natural disasters, civil unrest. I see World War III in the making, and biblically as well, in the prophecies. They got their hands full. They're not going to worry about us out in the country. And so don't let these other arguments tempt you not to follow God's counsel. Okay? That's the bottom line of what I'm trying to say here.
Kings and queens.
Oh, have you heard that Ellen White says that if we have a place in the country, we'll live like kings and queens during the time of trouble? Guess what, brothers and sisters? She didn't say that. You look up the quote. See if you can find it. I have looked for it. I have not found it. I have challenged other people to show it to me. They have not been able to. That is not what she said. Okay, you want to know what she did say? This is one of those things she said that people have twisted and inserted their own ideas. Thank you. That's the quote. Okay. I have it in here somewhere, but it's also sentences before and after it, and I'm just not finding it. Okay, just read it again.
Whenever possible, it is the duty of parents to make homes in the country for their children. Fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable home are kings and queens.
Okay, fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable home are kings and queens. She doesn't mention, that's not the context of the time of trouble, right? That's the context now. Did you see the difference? She's not saying that we will live like kings and queens during the time of trouble. She's saying we are, if we have a piece of land and a comfortable home, we are kings and queens now. There's a big difference in my thinking anyway with that. And I'll share why here in just a minute. We've got to get this list on the board here first. Yes?
I think the sentence you're talking about before that, this is from Country Living, page 18.
Uh-huh.
Are willing to earn their bread by the sweat of their brow, and they refuse to till the soil. For the earth has blessings hidden in her depths for those who have courage and will and perseverance to gather the treasures. And then it goes into the fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land.
Yeah, okay.
That is the willingness to persevere and work at it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a part of the picture. Okay? We think kings and queens means everybody waiting on us and we can live our little selfish consumer life. That's not what she's talking about. All right. Back to where we were here. If we're not able to buy or sell, I'm just going to make several points here. That means, number one, well, not number one, but just among other things, no electricity. Unless you happen to be set up with a hydroelectric or solar system on your own place. Okay? And so right now we're going to assume we don't have that. Even if you do have it, we'll talk about that in a minute. But what does that take out? If you don't have any electricity, no refrigerator.
No AC.
No central heating and air.
No AC. Okay, most of us, let's be really honest here, most of us don't know how to cook without some kind of refrigeration, right? Even when we're out here camping, we got the ice box. What if we didn't have the ice box? Okay, because we don't have any ice. I mean, you might have the box, but you don't have any ice in it, so what? Right? So then this is things that are not going to be there. What else do we not have without electricity? No curling iron or hair blower, okay? Somebody mentioned no washing machine.
No YouTube.
No electronic communication.
No technology.
Okay, no electronic communication devices. And I hope you're just seeing how big a part of our lives this is. And it's not. Oh, what was the other one somebody mentioned there? Yeah, maybe no stove if you're electric.
No lights.
No microwave. Lights. Okay, you get the picture?
Hot water.
Maybe no hot water. Okay, do you see how this is going to change our lifestyle? Drastically. Yes?
We had an ice storm last year in the part of Tennessee I am, and we were without power for a full week, from a Tuesday to a Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
And it was delightful. I have a little stove, we ate a lot of soup, but I have a little oven that goes on a camp stove. And,
Yeah.
you know, it really, once I dug my solar lamp out of the box, and, you know, it really was good. No email, no.
Well, God, I think, like the quote we read yesterday, I think, God is giving us these experiences to prepare us, for when it goes out for good. And I think that the interesting thing is we picture this not happening to us, poor little us, right? But with all the civil unrest and disasters, the whole grid's going down. And so nobody else is going to have it either. God's told us this ahead of time. We can prepare and we're ready for it, both physically and mentally, especially mentally. They're not ready for it. And so you think they had civil unrest before the grid went down? Think of what's going to happen after the grid goes down. People are going through the roof. That's one of the reasons Jesus said, get out of the cities, because you don't want to be there with all those angry people. Yes?
In France right now, there's some type of unrest in unions.
Yeah.
And the government threatened, if you continue, will shut down the grid.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
now in France.
The grid's real easy to take out. I'm not going to go there. I'll get in trouble for being a terrorist. No, just thinking about it. And my dad got this really simple idea that could take out the grid, and I'm sure other people have thought about this, and I'm not going to pass it on because whatever. But I mean, the grid could go down real easy. It's real easy to take. If somebody's serious about taking out the grid, it's a very fragile system. And the scary thing is a lot of the transformers that they use for it, they make them over in Europe, and it's months to get them ordered and back over here again to get up and running. The only reason the grid works is because they're able to switch stuff around, and so if one area goes down, they can just reroute things until they get it back up and running again. But if there's like multiple disasters and stuff, it's going down for good. So it's not just us that are going to be out. Again, God has warned us what's going to happen so that we can prepare physically and mentally. The rest of the world's going to be in the same condition, or actually worse. And so, country living at that time is going to be a real blessing. We need to stop looking at it as deprivation. Yes? Yeah.
I was following a story about a town in Nigeria where 2 million people, the city officials determined the drinking water wasn't safe, so they shut it off. The whole city of 2 million people had to do without pressurized water,
Yeah.
and people were dying up and running.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the other one. If the grid goes down,
They had power, they had electric, but they didn't have clean water.
no running water. Again, unless you have your own solar or gravity-fed system going. Yes?
Just as far as I am, you did mention gravity-fed systems, but if you use a hydraulic ram,
Yeah.
hydraulic ram, we can push water up to a high point and you can still have pressurized water.
In my thinking, that's still a type of gravity-fed system because it's fed by gravity. Okay. Somebody else mentioned this a while back. No gas. And I'm including everything in that, not just gasoline for the car, but also like natural gas that gets piped to the house for heating and cooking, as well as propane systems and so on, okay? And so this takes out the ability to your stove and your heater and your vehicles. And from our perspective, maybe more importantly, power equipment. Okay? Your garden tractor, your chainsaw, the weed eater, your chipper shredder, all of those. All right? So what will we have? We will have to heat and cook. How? With wood. Now I've got to say something on this one here before we go any farther. This past winter, y'all had a bad storm. It might have been the ice storm you talk about. Anyway, in connection with that, somebody posted this blog that somebody had put up on 10 ways to cook in an emergency. And I was just kind of reading through them for interest because somebody had sent it to me, and they know I'm into this stuff. And it was really interesting. Almost every single one of them said outdoor use only, outdoor use only. You know, like cooking on your barbecue outside, or just even a campfire in the yard, so on. Little propane camp stoves, you're supposed to use those outside too. And about the only one that was okay for indoors was like a can of Sterno. And if you're ever messed with those, they're great for keeping food warm, but as far as cooking on one, that can be a real challenge. And I'm like, wait a minute. They're expecting this really bad storm. That means the weather outside is going to be really bad, but you have to go outside in order to do all this stuff? That doesn't make sense. Okay? You see where I'm going with this? There are all these ways that we can cook with wood, but they all are outside. And most homes nowadays are set up for electricity with all of this stuff. We are not set up, most homes are not set up to heat or cook with wood. And so during that time, if we have that typical type home set up, we're not going to be able to function. So we need to have homes for that time that we can heat and cook with wood indoors. The problem with those, though, is they can put carbon monoxide into the air, and if you're using them in a closed room, it can be dangerous.
The butane ones?
The butane ones.
Because the ones that I have say that it's for indoors.
It's for indoors. They need to be vented somehow. They need to be vented to outside somehow in order to be safe to use indoors.
Because the ones that I have are especially designed for, like, when a person's doing catering. These are to be used indoors for events like that.
But for short term.
Yeah, short term, and usually you're in a larger room, and so it's not scary. But like in a small enclosed space, those can be dangerous.
Besides, you're gonna be able to buy that when you can't buy it yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the thing is, yeah, the butane is getting taken out here with the rest of the gas. But how long is that going to last? Once the butane's out, then what? Okay, ultimately we're back to cooking and heating with wood. And so we need to get set up for that. Okay, I've got a whole bunch of hands. Okay.
Well, we actually have some friends who are at home at cooking and heating with wood.
Mm-hmm.
We heat with wood. We heat with. We heat with wood, but we don't currently cook with wood. But we have friends who cook with wood, and during the summer they just have, like, we went to visit them, and they just have their stove out on the porch, and they just heat. I mean, they cook with it out there.
I just bought my farm this past July, and I put a cook stove in it, and I just never really thought I wanted to do much cooking, and I kind of dreaded living by myself and doing my own cooking. But it's really much more easy and simple than I thought it would be. I can put light a fire in my wood stove in the evening, put a pot of beans and rice on the stove, and just turn it down, and then go to sleep and sleep for 8 hours and wake up, and I have beans and rice to eat. You know, and I never stoked it during the night, never did anything. I mean, it's very easy, very simple, you know.
You can learn how to make it work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Right.
You know, it's
Well,
really-
but you're set up for it.
Yeah.
And that's the issue I'm stressing here,
So set
is
up
if you're
now.
set up for it, yes, to set up now, if you're set up for it, you can make it work. Okay, it's not that hard to make it work, but we need to be set up for it, and most homes nowadays are not set up for it. Yes, sir.
You say about being set up for it now, and I just want to emphasize, I heard in California, beginning in 2016, no new homes are allowed to have wood-burning fireplaces.
Yeah,
And so will these things progress? I don't know. but
Probably.
I think now should be an emphasis.
yeah.
It pays to look for pots and pans that have metal handles, and especially ones that you could hang. I'm not real good at this at my house, but the plastic handled pots and pans you have, when you put them over the fire, you're gonna find you accidentally melting the plastic handle off, and, you know, then you're running for rags or something to substitute for that plastic handle.
Part of being set up for it. Thank you.
Cast iron cooking,
What?
cast iron pot.
Cast iron, exactly.
One of the things too that, he was talking about the wood stoves being banned in houses. One of the things my husband and I want to do is build a barn and move in,
Uh-huh.
because that's got totally different regulations than a structure that's built as a house.
Right.
And so that there are ways, not that we want to be deceitful, but there are ways around some of these regulations.
Yes.
When I first moved to Kentucky, they wouldn't give me electricity, which at the time I didn't know some of these things. That was many years ago, but we built a barn and had a 200 amp breaker put in the barn. And then we built a trailer and I wired to the trailer from the barn.
Yeah.
So we had electricity.
Yeah.
So there's ways around some of these things. You just have to be a little creative.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, God gave us that if we'll just use it.
There is, you can find on YouTube, I guess I'm one of them, but there's a nice rocket stove.
Yes.
You can make it yourself.
Yes.
I mean, with bricks, you can make it with bricks. You can make it with cement in a bucket, in a couple of tubes,
Yes.
or cans. You can make those and have those available, even to use inside out, provided that you mentioned that you have exhaust to outside.
Right. You have to vent it to the
To vent
outside.
it outside, and the small
Right.
rocket stove that you can use in your house too.
Right. Yeah. There's lots of options actually. Just I don't have time to get into all of them. Okay. Let's put a couple more things on the board here and move on. I think you're getting the picture. Where's our food going to come from? Oh, you mentioned garden, huh? Garden, one in. When we think of growing our food, we typically think of gardening. But does all of our food come from a garden? No. Where else does food come from? The grocery store. Oh, please.
I mean, the nuts, you don't plant the walnut trees, but they're there.
Okay, we need some orchards too. Fruit and nut orchards. What else? Where else does food come from?
The streams, wild greens along the streams.
How about a berry patch? And there's still one really important thing that we have left off of this list. Grains, that's right. A lot of the food we eat is grains. Okay, we need to seriously consider growing our own grains. I have been playing with grains for the last 2 years about, and I have found that grains are really easy to grow. The hard part with grains is thrashing them, depending on which grain you're using. If you're growing corn, that's much easier to work with, and y'all can grow corn here. Just where we're at in California, I'm finding that a lot of the conventional garden wisdom is just backwards for us, where we are. And the reason I'm mentioning that more than anything else is to stress that you need to learn how to make growing your food work in your location, which isn't going to necessarily follow the typical pattern. Ours doesn't. Our best growing season is in the winter. Okay? The way our climate works is it starts raining in November, and we get rains from November through April or May. And then the rains quit. We have a rainy season and dry season, and when it quits raining, I mean, that's it. We might get one of these 6-inch rains in July sometime, where the drops are 6 inches apart. And so we really, essentially have no rain again until it starts raining in November, which means fire risk goes through the roof, because we got grass growing this high all over our place right now. Because this past winter we've gotten a lot of good rain. A lot of the grains are winter crops, okay, like wheat. I have some soft wheat I've been growing the last couple of years, and it just grows. And harvesting it, I haven't had a really good success yet in harvesting it. I got both a scythe and a sickle, and I found, the scythe goes quicker, but it's way messier. The sickle, I can harvest it way more efficiently on myself. But then thrashing the grain efficiently, time-wise, is a challenge. They have manual threshers. Somebody out here is making one, I think in Tennessee somewhere. But they want like $900 for this thing, and I'm looking at it and like I could make that for about $100. I'm not going to pay $900 for it. Again, unfortunately, in other countries around the world, they're more into small-scale production. And so they have machinery that's small scale that's available. Whereas in this country, everything is big. And you got this huge combine that can take out an acre every 4 minutes or whatever it is. So anyway, this is something we need to work on more. And again, I'm talking small scale. I'm just trying to do it by myself, basically. If you have a group of people, hand harvesting and threshing goes much better. But if you're trying to do it by yourself, then that makes things more limited. Anyway, your hand was first, and then we got a whole bunch of other ones out there.
I was thinking last night, I got to thinking about the part about the if necessary, God would feed with ravens and things. I started thinking about different areas of the country. And, when we were doing our weed walk yesterday, in this area, it's lush and green with lots of rain. I mean, there are different parts of this country, and you brought up the area in your area where you don't get much rain certain parts of the year. Right. My parents live in western Colorado, and that place, is an irrigated desert.
Right.
With the no buy, no sell, then there's no water.
Right.
Because their irrigation bill, comes as part of a, utilities package.
Right.
And so, I'm thinking that some areas of the country that are more desert may be the if necessary, because, God's going to take care of everybody, but I'm just wondering, where that comes in. Because
well, the other part of that is preparation.
Yes.
If you have it, and I feel like what we talked about presumption the other night, if we have the chance to prepare and don't, we're placing ourselves needlessly in danger. It's we that have placed ourselves in that danger, not God. And so he's not going to work a miracle in that situation. He said, you should have prepared. If you would have prepared, had your own well with maybe a hand pump or something like that, at least you'd have water. But now you don't have any because they just shut it off on you because you can't pay your bill because you didn't accept the mark of the beast. He might let us suffer a little bit to teach us a lesson. I don't think he'd let us die necessarily, but I'm sure we'd get punished a bit. Yeah, let's just take this one over here.
Yes, and talking about wood stoves and things, it's very, and I appreciate, what Titus said. One thing about wood stoves, I mean, I cooked on them for months and things. We don't have rice in the time of trouble because it's really hard to grow rice here, where we're at. So we're gonna have to know how to use other grains.
Right.
And also, cooking on the top of a cook stove is very simple, but cooking in an oven is a whole different thing.
Yep.
You've got to learn a whole new way. There's no burner to turn on and set at 350. There's no little knob. You have got to stoke that fire and keep that heat for as long as that food is in that wood stove. It's not that simple. You have to learn, meaning, I'm not saying it can't be done because, we live in an Amish and Mennonite community. It's done, and I did it. But the thing is, it's not something you're going to learn overnight, and that's why we need to educate ourselves now.
Preach it, sister.
You know what I mean? Because, we lived it. We lived off-grid, solar, and everything, and sure, I didn't do it for years. We did it for 6 months. But the point is, it taught me a lot that I need to learn, because you can't just put a pot, and I remember all those little round things on the top of the stove that they moved to, see the fire or whatever. We were putting our pots on it like as if it was a burner. It's not a burner. You know what I mean? It's not hotter on that part. And we had to educate ourselves coming from an electric stove to go to a wood stove. We had to learn. I remember my first batch of rice. It was like wallpaper paste because I couldn't get my heat hot enough to keep it at a level pace. We don't realize when we put our pot on high, it's on high. But at a wood stove, if I don't keep on top of it and keep that heat in that wood stove, I'm going to have pasty rice, or I'm going to have something that's not edible. It does take an education. That's why we have to get real now.
Can you imagine the people who wait till the last minute to move out? And they don't know, they're not set up, they don't know how any of this stuff works, and the stress of that time alone, right, is going to be enough to deal with without having to learn all this stuff. Absolutely. I hope you heard what she said loud and clear. Now is the time to learn this stuff, work the bugs out of our system, whatever system we end up getting set up with, and know how to make it work so we can help those who haven't had a chance to come out sooner. Okay? I want to say something here too. The list that we had on the board before I erased it and put this up, it looks like an awful lot. All right? And I've been trying for many years to try to learn how to do all of it. And what God has forced me to learn here, but just recently, is no one person can do it all. Okay? No one person can do it all and do it all well. Which means we need each other. Okay? Pick an area that suits your talents and your abilities. Focus on that. And trust that God will bring you together with other people and you can complement each other's skills and tools and equipment and just knowledge and everything. And so, the American mindset is like the individual out by himself, doing it all. It's not God's way. Don't try. Thank you.
You haven't really gone into this weekend, but I believe the Lord gave us reasoning ability, and there are just some places that we should not move to, period, in the United States. There's better places to move to. Like, we've been doing this land search for, I'm thinking 3 months, and we have not found the ideal place, but and there's a lot of good places to live in Kentucky and Tennessee and stuff. But God gave us reasoning ability, and Arizona desert would not be one of my choices, at this time.
Having said that, we were in Arizona desert just last weekend, and there is a family setting up there, and God is, it's obvious to them and us, because they've told us their story, that God led them there. There's certain places in the Arizona desert that I totally agree with you, but I have to just add this, is the best place for you is wherever God takes you. Okay? You said you've been searching for 3 months. We moved to where we are now about 3 years ago, and we searched for 6 months. Okay, we were going all up and down. I've heard of people searching for 2 years. I'm not sure we have that kind of time left, to plan on that type of a land search, but what I really want to say here is the place that God led us to. And again, it's obvious to us that God led us where we are because it works for us, and it works for our ministry, and my ministry has been able to expand because of it, and so on. And also because of what's happened in the local church there, and just lots of different reasons. It's not the place I would have chosen. Okay? I was talking with somebody here, and I have put this out in my information that I think the ideal place for the first part of the time of trouble is where you have your back up against the wilderness, so when the time comes you can just walk out your back door and away you go. And so that's the kind of place I was looking for. That's not where God led us. We may not be there, or we may be there, when the time comes to flee. I don't know. Just God's had me move around a lot, and that's why I question it rather than, say go here, and then we end up staying there for a long time. Just God hasn't led that way in our lives. But if God leads you to a place, there will be a reason for it, and it'll be workable for you there. And so, yes, God's given us reasoning ability, and we should rule out certain areas because we've just realized those won't work good. But at the same time, if God happens to send you to one of these places that you would not choose to go to yourself, and it's obvious that He's sending you there, don't hold back on Him, right? Because He's got plans for you there that couldn't happen anywhere else. Now, that's not to say set yourself up for hardship, unnecessary hardship. I've been preaching that that's something we shouldn't do since I got here, and I believe that. So, it takes a lot of thought, and fortunately, God gave us a brain to be able to do that with. Okay? You got the mic still? I think it's way in the back there.
I'm just saying, God needs His people everywhere.
Yeah, He needs us everywhere, exactly.
In the desert, He needs us in the mountains.
That's right.
Wherever people flee, they got to have a place to go.
Right. And it talks about the most desolate and solitary places, and having kicked around a lot of country, the most desolate, solitary places that I know are out in the middle of the Nevada desert, which in my opinion is worse than Arizona, having been there. All right? But yet, if that's the place that we end up fleeing to, God's got it worked out for us there. So yeah, use your brain, but at the same time, don't limit God. Okay?
We were in Utah a few years back, and hiking around there, and it was just desert, that red dirt, and it was just desert and dry and stuff. And then we hiked on this little trail down under this huge, huge rock, like this big log rock landing. We hiked down underneath it. Underneath there, which you couldn't even see from the top, was this spring coming up, and all kinds of vegetation. It was a big area, probably about the size of this.
I'd say about half the size of this pavilion here, this huge rock, and underneath the rock was this spring and this lush little area down there.
You never know what kind of places God has prepared for us, and He's promised that He will prepare. He's preparing. He already has caves and stuff in the mountains prepared for us for the time we have to flee to the wilderness. So He's going to take care of us where we are, but we need to trust Him. We need to do our part, and if He's going to do what we can't do, we need to trust Him.
Okay, one more point on this list here, we're moving on, is we're going to have to make and/or trade for the other things we need. Which gets back to the list we had on the board previously. Because not only do we need all those things, everybody else also needs all those things. And being able to trade with our neighbors or other people that God brings us in contact with might make all the difference in the world because of the contacts that we could make there and the witnessing that we're able to do there. And letting people know why we're doing what we're doing. And letting them know what's coming. giving them a chance to get out. Okay, turn to quotation number, where'd it go? 64. And in the booklet, it's number 54. Okay, if you have the booklet, it's number 54. On the quote sheet, it's number 64. So Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, page 201, 202. What's the question? In the quote sheet, it's number 64. If you have the booklet, it's number 54. Selected messages. Oh. Let me double check here. 54, 54, 54. It's the same quote. No, the 54 one is correct.
Yes.
The 64 one is not correct. The Selected Messages, Book 3, that's the quote we want. Sorry. Okay, I need to know what quote it is in the quote sheet then. Anybody finds it, let us know. Ah, here it is, 59. 59 in the quote sheet. Sorry about that. And thank you for calling that to my attention. So 54 in the booklet, 59 on the quote sheet. Selected Messages, Book 3, page 427, 428. Right there? It says, the time of trouble was upon us. But notice the clues that let us know what part of the time of trouble. I saw our people in great distress, weeping and praying, pleading the sure promises of God, while the wicked were all around us, mocking us and threatening to destroy us. They ridiculed our feebleness. They mocked at the smallness of our numbers. They taunted us with words calculated to cut deep. They charged us with taking an independent position from all the rest of the world. They had cut off our resources so that we could not buy or sell, and they referred to our what? Abject poverty and stricken condition. They could not see how we could live without the world. We were dependent on the world, and we must concede to the customs, practices, and laws of the world or go out of it. If we were the only people in the world whom the Lord favored, the appearances were awfully against us. Doesn't sound like kings and queens to me. Yeah, I know. How is our description, how is our condition described there? Abject poverty. Let that soak in, okay? When you picture abject poverty, who do you think of? Yeah, the guy on the intersection with the cardboard sign, right?
Yeah, some of them make $300 a day.
Yeah, I know. Oh, that opens up a whole other subject. We're not going there. We don't have time. Anyway, abject poverty. Let's just say homeless. All right? And again, it doesn't sound like kings and queens. And so if we're living in abject poverty during that time, what happened to that nice country home that we had set up with all sorts of alternate energy comfort beforehand? What? Someone else is enjoying it. That's a possibility. What else? What's another possibility? No, this is before we fled to the wilderness because we're still interacting with society.
Well, your solar stuff, once you can't buy or sell, you can't buy another battery if one goes out, or...
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not.
This is what this is the picture I see of us in the last part of the first part of the time of trouble, like just before we end up fleeing to the wilderness, after no buy, no sell. And so I'm sharing it to let you know what we're up against, but also to be thinking that direction. Where we left off was talking about, okay, what about that nice home, okay, set up in alternate energy comfort? For something's going to happen to that. Okay, maybe we're going to be forced to move. Maybe there's going to be some natural disaster that takes it out. Maybe we're going to get raided and it's going to get destroyed. But what I see, is it's not going to be there, because if it was, it wouldn't be called abject poverty. And so my point here is maybe we shouldn't put so much focus on trying to get that set up if we're going to lose it anyway.
Right.
Okay? Solar systems, they're really nice, but they're also very expensive, and they're getting cheaper, and they're very fragile. Okay, when we went out looking for property, we saw one piece of property that had this very elaborate and very nice solar system set up, but you know what? It was non-functional. And the people were still living there. They just learned how to live without power, because that was easier than trying to fix the solar system. Go figure, okay? That taught me a huge lesson. Think about other alternate energy. I think a hydroelectric's a little bit more straightforward and so on if you happen to have that to work. But I'm going to hold off on taking hands just for a little bit because we need to cover a little bit of ground. And we're getting late. I'm sorry. I really like letting you all speak.
Blame me.
Okay, I'll blame Titus. You can blame him too. He said so. If you were living, let me just ask a question here. If you were living in abject poverty, what would you be living in?
A shack.
Okay, yeah, maybe a shack. What do a lot of other homeless live in though? A tent. And so I'm going to go with a tent. Yeah, you might end up in something less or something more, but I'm just going to picture a tent. We invited you all to come over and see our tent. Okay, is there anybody here who has not been over and visited our tent? Okay, then let's go over there to the front porch of our tent right now.